Hi guys, welcome back to the Social Tune. And today, as promised, I am finally going to talk about the long-anticipated 5th studio album by Marianas Trench, Phantoms.
We said it way too much to just let it make a mess of us. I knew you were.
You know, it felt a little bit odd for me putting together this review, especially when I look back to the end of 2017, when I reviewed this band's entire discography and basically introduced them as my favorite band. Back then, I had to emphasize that fact over and over again. And now, after even making a list of my favorite songs by them, link in the description, it genuinely feels like I've accomplished something as a fan of theirs. Now, does that mean that making that video and reviewing the band's entire discography makes any difference? Probably not. But it still feels so great to see the few comments of fans discovering their music for the first time thanks to my video. It's sort of like when you turn someone on to your favorite game or series, it just feels so great to share something you love so much. And so, as you may have guessed, I was very excited to talk about their new album, Phantoms. True, it didn't have Rhythm of Your Heart on it, but the rest of the singles were more than enough to get me hyped for this, especially when I heard the theme behind it. Challenging themselves once again, the guys decided to make an album based around the idea of a haunted house. Not so much the scary kind, but more like the type on Farron Young's Hello Walls. A house haunted by memories of a past lover that can either be taken literally or figuratively. And as luck would have it, I managed to catch the live release of their album on their YouTube channel. Meaning, yes, I was one of the first ones to hear it. So what did I think, and did Marianas Trench pull off yet another shift in their sound? Well, to answer that, we first need to dive into that haunted theme.
Echoes of you, beating from the beating of you.
Now, Marianas Trench are no strangers to tragic love stories. Ever After is a showcase of a complicated relationship developing and crumbling, while Astoria was inspired by Josh's real-life breakup with his fiancée. This takes a similar approach to the latter, dedicated to the character of Eleonora, the ghost who is haunting our protagonist's mind. Heck, the first track might as well take place around a Ouija board, calling out to the memory of the woman who haunts these walls. And what I really appreciate is that they never actually get the spirit to show up, furthering the idea that this is a one-sided lonely obsession that our protagonist may be pushing too far out of sheer melodrama and self-pity. And believe it or not, I mean all of that as a compliment, because this album never comes across as mopey or unlikable. No, in typical Marianas Trench fashion, the songs are opulent and soaring with a ton of highlights. From the haunting harpsichord touches that build to a creepy theremin that creates a ton of atmosphere along with the overlapping vocals towards the end of Echoes of You, to the sharper groove and vocal accents of Don't Miss Me, to the tight, sparse composition that builds up to an instrumental drop on Your Ghost, to the wonderful atmospheric ballad Glimmer. But my favorite tracks are the opener and the closer. Now, I don't really count Eleonora, which is gorgeous but does serve as more of an intro to the album, but it then leads us into Only the Lonely Survive, a song that could soundtrack a spaceship whizzing off to the stars it's aiming for. The atmospheric blend of instrumentals with the steady percussion on the verses, the guitar accents that come in on that pre-chorus, and of course the hook itself with its soaring synths and strings, all of these elements are perfectly placed and timed. And the result is one of the best songs that this band has ever put together. But that's not to discount the closer, The Killing Kind, which is easily the creepiest song on this project in the best possible way, with the haunting string plucks that open it up, the voice modulation on the singing that goes through multiple shifts within even the first minute. In many ways, it's their best outro since Masterpiece Theater 3, right down to the strings, horns, and drums that join into the mix one by one, while still feeling constructed into a consistent melody. And of course, you have the howl that Josh lets out midway through the song, followed by the the multiple overlapping samples from the entire album. The band have done this towards the end of each of their albums, and I swear, it never gets old, as they always add original lyrics and fresh recordings to make it more than just a simple medley. And the final minute of the song builds and builds to a climactic finish like no other band can deliver. Incredibly epic and an easy standout that every fan is sure to scream at. So yeah, on a composition level, this album is unbelievable, as usual. But if we're going to praise the positive elements, we do need to acknowledge the one or two experiments that do work, but just not quite as well. The build and crash of Death of Me is very tragic, with some of the best songwriting on the album, but the drop that it eventually builds to doesn't quite pay off in the same way the one on Your Ghost does, with a very processed guitar riff that just feels a bit too rubbery. Not to mention Wish You Were Here, which is an above-average pop song for sure, but also feels like a B-side from Astoria, sort of a lesser This Means War. And it just doesn't quite fit in, especially when the brighter production doesn't quite match the tone of the lyrics. I still like it, of course, but it is the weak spot on the album for me. Still, even on those songs, the writing remains very focused. As I mentioned before, the album opens addressing the ghost our protagonist is haunted by, given the name Eleonora. And the narrative actually unfolds very naturally. He starts out by denying that he misses her on Only the Lonely Survive, but that while he does say he is better than before, the echoes of her ghosts still haunt him to this day. Hence why he's visiting her haunted house, an image that he has conjured up in his mind to revisit his memories of her. He tries to keep up the charade, claiming that he never thinks of her and that it's not like he misses her, but almost immediately he cracks, first inquiring if she misses him, before admitting that he does still wish that she were here with him. After all, for as far as he's tried to run since their breakup, the spectre of her face continues to haunt him. Which leads us into the gorgeous romantic ballad Glimmer, where he can see the two of them in his mind's eye, and it's wonderful. But of course, in typical mature fashion, he realizes that that was then, and this is now. He knew her back then, sure, but they both changed and grew apart, as couples sometimes do. So eventually, he does let her go, no matter how painful that may be. And now that he's released her, he's finally able to acknowledge his own shortcomings, knowing that his love can be intense and the killing kind, making room for self-improvement and new lessons to learn, ending the album on a triumphant and incredibly satisfying note.
Burns us both till love's this close. We lose ourselves, and I know we won't get out alive, but only the lonely survive.
Now for the new viewers, as you may have guessed over the course of watching this review, I love Marianas Trench. They are the only band that, to date, I have given 2 perfect 10 out of 10 scores to. However, I am also a critic, so there is still the 9 out of 10 I gave Ever After, as well as the 8 out of 10 I gave their studio debut, Fix Me. My point is, if you want to appreciate your favorite things, you need to acknowledge the 1 or 2 times they don't deliver absolute perfection. As with every one of their releases, Phantoms shows the band taking their sound in a bold new direction, which should be both greatly appreciated and admired. The writing is fantastic and the story is very well structured, with a sympathetic character that many of us can relate to in more ways than we might like to admit. But at least for me, it's not quite as sharp or as ambitious as Astoria. That album's scope was grand and soaring, with the songwriting to match, giving us the equivalent of an 80s fantasy adventure in musical form, while Phantoms isn't quite as ambitious, aiming for something that might have taken a little bit more experimentation, but just doesn't feel like quite as much of a passion project. With all that being said though, it is well up to their standard. The hooks are as catchy as ever, the high points are incredible, the songwriting is poetic and filled with quotes from classic horror films and novels. The compositions are far more intricate than a lot of people will give them credit for, while including several instrumental and production tricks that are seminal to the classical horror genre. Josh and the others sound as fantastic as usual, and even the one or two nitpicks I have really do come down to my own personal preferences. And ultimately, if it weren't for their two perfect albums, I would probably consider this the best that they could hope to accomplish. So, while I wouldn't quite call it perfect, it's still easily a strong 9 out of 10. This album still sounds like pure Marianas Trench. Entirely unique and wonderful in a way that makes you wonder why other bands haven't tried to copy them. In our day and age, Marianas Trench are the definition of underrated. And seeing how many units Phantoms is pushing, I can only hope that this will be the album that finally breaks them through into the big leagues, because more than any other act working right now, they are oh so deserving of it.
Never wanna leave here, never wanna leave here. You should never be here. I know my love can be a killing kind. Here and now, if this is it, can't get out from under it.
So, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. If you also managed to catch the album live stream, then leave a comment below. It's an experience I was so glad to have. And hey, feel free to leave your own thoughts on this album down there as well, including your favorite songs from it. And if you haven't checked it out yet, trust me, you'll want to fix that. This album is incredible. Heck, if you're new to the band, I have reviews for all of their albums, as well as my top 10 favorite songs by them linked towards the end of this video. More videos coming soon, so please subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And until the next time, I'm Finn, and this is the Social Tunes signing off.